They realized that a comedy could make money associated with scary stuff. And I think they felt that using that title was a mistake because of the word comedy as a takeoff of the Shakespearean title as it was. But they wanted me to do another picture that was funny. So I gave them the idea that two undertakers, the owner of which is Vincent Price, and whenever things got too financially bad, he would go out and make himself a customer by killing him. And Peter Lorre went along with it because he had been a criminal, and Vincent Price always held it over his head that he would give him over to the police if he didn't go along with what he did. And he never had anything to do with actually killing anyone, but he would have to drive the hearse. He would have to help carry the bodies and things like that.
My end must be heavier than your end.
I don't know whether that's what I really want, but just to cement the idea that I'm a storyteller, I thought my tombstone should just say Richard Matheson, storyteller.
I'll be very glad to build a new one.
Nicholson was really my friend in court, and we got along very well. Very nice man, and he loved that. He came up with the title because the West Side Story was being in the films in the screen at that time. He wanted to call it Graveside Story. Fortunately, it probably would have made more money with that title. He knew what he was doing, but my title is better. As Fred Allen once said, the associate producer is the only one who will associate with the producer. I really did nothing as the associate producer. I wrote the script, and everybody loved the script. And I remember a lunch we had just before they shot, where we all went out, and they were so delighted with the script, especially Basil Rathbone, who was just burbling all over the place about it. He was supposed to play the part that Boris Karloff was going to play, and then Boris Karloff, by that time, his legs were in such bad shape. The part that Basil Rathbone played required a lot of movement, a lot of action. He said, let's reverse the parts. So he played their old father, who didn't have to do much of anything.
I am afraid, madam, that he has made his final crossing to that Stygian shore.
What?
He's dead.
Price was marvelous at comedy, and Joyce Jameson was wonderful too. Karloff, he was delightful at comedy, and Rathbone was just hysterical in that movie. He was an absolute delight. I suggested Jacques Tourneur to them. There was no problem with that. The problem I had was getting him talking the Twilight Zone, to letting him do one of my Twilight Zones. And they said, well, he's a movie director, he'll take too long. And they didn't realize, I saw one of his books. It was so meticulous. He knew every single step he was going to make. And I think he shot the shortest Twilight Zone shooting schedule of any show that had ever been made on the show. He was such a professional. He knew exactly what he was doing. He loved the script. He directed that picture so well. For instance, there was a scene where Price has killed this old man, and then the widow doesn't show up at the funeral, and he goes out to the house and finds out she's left town with all her furniture and all her money, and he looks up in the air, and I had written in the script, a sort of a light bathes over him as if from heavy soil, and he says,
is there no morality left in this world?
and Jacques got that perfectly. He got the whole picture perfectly. Oh, it made money. Everything they made money. I mean, they didn't spend enough to lose money. They liked Comedy of Terror so much. They thought, well, we'll put them all in the picture again and add Tallulah Bankhead to it. And so I wrote this, I think, a very funny script called Sweethearts and Horrors about the Sweetheart family, where Peter Lorre was a magician who had a fire sequence in his magic act and burned down every theater he ever worked in. And Boris Karloff had a children's show. He was Uncle Dudley, the kindly old television host. He hated children. Vincent Price was a ventriloquist, and Basil Rathbone was an aging musical comedy star, and Tallulah Bankhead was a movie actress, an ex, big star, and they were all completely vicious with each other, except for Peter Lorre, of course. You couldn't make Peter Lorre vicious. He had to be the victim, really. It was filled with sight gags, and it would have made a wonderful picture. I don't know why they never made it. Well, I know about 3 or 4 of them died, I think, before they could. So that kind of took the wind out of the sails.
Ascend, Mr. Gilly. Well, don't caress it, Mr. Gilly. Climb it.
Every role I wrote for Price was different. The first one, he was this tortured Roderick Usher. And in The Pit and the Pendulum, he was suffering because he thought his dead wife was haunting him. And then he went back to his grand manner in Master of the World. And in The Raven, he was a sissy magician almost. And so I was glad to give him some real sharp lines in The Comedy of Terrors, because I knew he could do them well, and I'd never done it, never given him that kind of role to play.
Oh, don't be like that.
Get away from me.
Am I so repulsive?
That's the word, yes.
And Peter Lorre, you couldn't, there was something inherently soft and nice about him at that age. So you couldn't make him vicious in the pictures he was in.
Sit down, Mr. Gilly. Comfortable, Mr. Gilly?
I could not possibly write any of the stuff that I used to write, because it just would have no interest for me. Writing today, I just sold a novel which can be categorized as a suspense novel, but I wrote it to make a metaphysical point, which is what I'm interested in today. And I've always been interested in it, and I didn't realize I've used aspects of it in many of my short stories. What I've tried to do is reduce it all to a basic step-by-step introduction to what I think is reality. I had a book out called The Path. In The Path, I talk about sleep, as Percival spoke about sleep, that it is a psychic experience we have every night, that we recharge ourselves, our souls, so to speak, whatever, that the atmosphere in which we live recharges us. The meaning of life, that's really, you can break it down to its basic part, is what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Percival says that the greatest mystery in life is the difference between cause and effect, between sowing and reaping. It could be lifetimes apart. Sometimes it can be minutes apart, but it can be any, and that's what makes it seem so unreasonable. It makes this world seem so unreasonable, but it isn't. It isn't unreasonable. We don't understand it. We don't understand what's going on. The sooner people understand this, the sooner they'll change their lifestyles and realize that, I'm not getting away with anything. You don't get away with anything. And I believe that strongly.